A popular liberal TV host smirked as he pointed at Karoline Leavitt's necklace during a live segment. "Interesting choice," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The camera zoomed in, revealing a delicate gold chain with a small pendant, in the shape of a cross. Leavitt, a rising conservative voice, smiled knowingly. "Oh, this?" she said, lightly touching the necklace. "I didn't realize faith was a controversial accessory." The host chuckled, shaking his head. "It's just a bit on the nose, don't you think? A statement piece, perhaps?" Leavitt met his gaze calmly. "It's a symbol of my faith and values, just like your lapel pin represents yours. Unless, of course, some symbols are more acceptable than others." The studio fell into a brief silence. A few nervous shuffles could be heard off camera. The host cleared his throat. "Well, you have to admit, in today's political climate, people are reading into everything." Leavitt's expression remained unshaken. "Exactly, that's the problem. People are so busy looking for something to be offended by that they forget what really matters. My necklace isn't a political statement, it's a personal one. Just like millions of Americans wear crosses, Stars of David, or other symbols that represent their beliefs." The host shifted in his seat, clearly not expecting such a poised response. "Fair enough," he conceded. "But some would argue that mixing faith with politics—" Leavitt interrupted with a polite but firm tone. "Faith guides our values, our morals, and our decision-making. It's not about forcing beliefs on others. It's about having the courage to stand by them. And frankly, I find it interesting that a simple necklace gets more scrutiny than actual policies affecting everyday Americans." The audience, mostly quiet until now, reacted with a mix of murmurs and scattered applause. The host exhaled sharply, seemingly debating his next move. "I suppose you have a point," he admitted. Leavitt smiled. "I usually do." The host forced a chuckle, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "All right, Karoline, I'll give you that one, but let's be honest. There are plenty of people who see these displays of faith as a way to push an agenda." Leavitt tilted her head slightly, her confidence unwavering. "And who decides that? If someone wears a rainbow pin, is that pushing an agenda? If someone has a BLM sticker on their laptop, is that a political statement or just personal expression? The problem isn't the necklace, it's the double standard." The host hesitated, clearly aware that she was making a valid point. "So you're saying there's an unfair bias?" Leavitt's smile didn't falter. "I'm saying that when faith-based values don't fit a certain narrative, they're labeled controversial. Meanwhile, other personal beliefs are not only accepted but celebrated. I respect freedom for everyone, including those who don't share my beliefs, but respect has to go both ways." The audience, now fully engaged, responded with another round of light applause. The host shifted in his chair, his expression unreadable. "So you don't think there's a place to separate faith from public life?" Leavitt leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "Faith is already part of public life. It's in our founding documents, our institutions, and our communities. You don't have to share my beliefs, but you should respect my right to have them, just as I respect yours." The host sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I have to admit, I didn't expect this conversation to go this direction." Leavitt smirked. "That's what happens when you assume a necklace is just a statement rather than a symbol of something deeper." For a moment, the host said nothing. Then he let out a small laugh and shrugged. "Fair enough, Karoline. You've made your case." Leavitt's expression remained poised. "I usually do." The host exhaled sharply, glancing at the camera as if searching for a way to pivot. "All right, Karoline, I'll give you credit for handling that well. But let's talk about something else. There are people who believe figures like you are using faith as a shield against criticism. What do you say to them?" Leavitt didn't miss a beat. "I say that's nonsense. If anything, being open about my beliefs invites more scrutiny, not less. Look at this conversation. We started with a joke about my necklace, and now we're questioning whether I should even express my faith in public. That tells me everything I need to know about where we are as a society." The host raised an eyebrow. And where is that exactly? Leavitt leaned back, crossing her arms. In a place where traditional values are treated like a threat, while trendy activism is treated like virtue. But let's be real. Americans aren't buying it. They see the hypocrisy. They know that if I were wearing any other kind of symbol, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. The audience stirred, and a few people nodded along. The host pursed his lips, clearly weighing his next words carefully. I'll admit you're good at flipping the narrative. Leavitt smiled. I don't flip anything. I just tell the truth. And the truth is, millions of Americans feel exactly the way I do. They're tired of being told their values are outdated or problematic. They're tired of being mocked for things that used to be considered normal. And most of all, they're tired of the double standard. The host let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. Well, Caroline, I may not agree with everything you say, but I can't deny you've made some strong points. Leavitt's smile didn't waver. I usually do. The host sighed, glancing at the camera again before turning back to her. All right, I think that's a good place to leave it. Karoline Leavitt, always a pleasure. She nodded. Likewise. The show cut to commercial, but the conversation was far from over. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of the exchange spread like wildfire, some praising Leavitt for standing her ground, others accusing the host of a thinly veiled attack. The debate raged on, but one thing was certain. What started as a dismissive joke about a necklace had turned into a defining moment. And Karoline Leavitt had once again proven she wasn't afraid to fight back. As soon as the show cut to commercial, the host let out a deep sigh and leaned back in his chair. Well, that was something, he muttered, taking a sip of water. Leavitt remained composed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. You expected me to back down, didn't you? The host smirked. I expected you to play defense, maybe deflect a little. Instead, you turned it into an argument about double standards. Leavitt tilted her head, because that's exactly what it is. You and I both know that if I had been wearing a different kind of symbol, something that aligned with mainstream progressive narratives, we wouldn't even be discussing it. The host nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the truth in her words but unwilling to say so out loud. The producers signaled that they would be returning from commercial in 30 seconds. He straightened up, flipping through his notes, and exhaled. Meanwhile, social media was already ablaze. The clip of their exchange was being shared across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, with fiery commentary on both sides. Conservative influencers applauded Leavitt for standing firm, calling her response a masterclass in grace under pressure. Liberal commentators accused her of playing the victim, insisting that no one had actually attacked her necklace, just pointed it out. By the time the show resumed, the host seemed to realize the moment had already outgrown their conversation. All right, he said, forcing a grin. We've had a lively discussion so far, Caroline, but let's move on to the upcoming election. Leavitt, however, wasn't done. Before we do, I just want to say something directly to the audience. The host hesitated but gave a slight nod, signaling her to continue. She turned toward the camera, her expression unwavering. To anyone watching who feels like their faith, values, or personal beliefs are constantly under attack, stand firm. You don't have to apologize for what you believe. You don't have to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Wear your cross, speak your truth, and don't let anyone, no matter how powerful, make you feel small for standing by your convictions. A ripple of applause spread through the audience, even among some who had been skeptical of her earlier. The host looked momentarily caught off guard but quickly recovered. Well, that's certainly a message, he said, offering a half smile. Leavitt turned back to him. It's the message people need to hear, because this isn't just about me or my necklace. It's about a culture that tells millions of Americans they need to hide who they are just to fit in. As Karoline Leavitt sat in the quiet of her hotel room that evening, her phone continued to light up with messages and notifications. The clip of her exchange with the TV host was now trending across multiple platforms, with millions of views and thousands of comments pouring in by the minute. Some called her fearless, others accused her of playing the martyr. But no matter what people thought, one thing was undeniable. She had struck a nerve. A text from a close friend popped up on her screen. "You broke the internet today. Proud of you," she smiled, setting her phone aside for a moment to process everything. This wasn't just about her, or a necklace anymore. It was about a broader cultural moment, one where everyday Americans, exhausted by the constant attacks on their values, finally saw someone stand up and push back. Her phone rang. It was her communications director. "Caroline, you need to see this." She pulled her laptop onto her lap and opened the link he sent. It was a new article from a major news outlet with the headline, "Faith versus Politics. Karoline Leavitt's fiery exchange ignites nationwide debate." The article detailed how the conversation had gone from a lighthearted jab about her necklace to a larger discussion about religious freedom, personal expression, and double standards in media. It quoted prominent figures on both sides, some defending her, others accusing her of stoking division. But what caught her attention most was the section on public response. Across social media, thousands of people were now sharing their own stories of feeling judged, silenced, or dismissed for their beliefs. Hashtags like "Don't Stand with Caroline" and "On Faith Not Politics" were gaining traction. She exhaled, running a hand through her hair. Another message came through, this time from a well-known conservative leader. "You handled that perfectly. Let's talk soon." She knew what that meant. More interviews, more media attention, more opportunities, but also more scrutiny, more backlash, more people looking for ways to discredit her. She took a deep breath. She hadn't chosen this moment, but she wouldn't shy away from it either. The next morning, as she stepped out of her hotel, reporters were already waiting. Microphones and cameras pointed in her direction as the questions flew. "Caroline, do you think you overreacted? Was your response calculated? Do you stand by what you said?" She stopped, looked directly into the nearest camera, and smiled. "I stand by every word." And with that, she walked confidently to her car A's. Karoline Leavitt slid into the back seat of her car. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from a top conservative news network inviting her for an exclusive primetime interview. She smirked. The media frenzy was only growing, and she knew exactly how to navigate it. Her driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "You sure know how to make headlines," she chuckled. "I don't make headlines. I just refuse to back down." They pulled onto the highway. She scrolled through her social media feeds. Supporters flooded her mentions, praising her for standing firm. Many shared their own experiences of feeling silenced in workplaces, universities, and even within their own families. One message caught her eye. It was from an older woman named Margaret in Texas. "Ms. Leavitt, I just wanted to thank you. I've worn my cross necklace for years, but lately I've felt pressure to hide it. Watching you stand your ground reminded me that I shouldn't be ashamed of my faith. Keep fighting. We need you." Caroline's heart swelled. This was bigger than just one TV appearance. It was about people like Margaret, people who had been made to feel like they had to apologize for their values. Her moment of reflection was interrupted by an incoming call. It was her communications director again. She answered, expecting more media updates. "Caroline, you won't believe this," he said, his voice buzzing with energy. "That network that mocked you? Their clip of the interview has now been viewed over 20 million times. Even their audience is split. Some of their own viewers are siding with you." She raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. That's not all. Some major donors are reaching out. They see an opportunity here." Caroline knew what that meant. Bigger platforms, bigger political opportunities, the kind of momentum that could turn a rising political figure into a household name. But that also meant bigger targets on her back. She had already seen the hit pieces starting to roll in. Liberal pundits were scrambling to paint her as an opportunist, a provocateur, someone deliberately stoking division. She sighed, then straightened up. "I don't care about donors or viral clips," she said firmly. "I care about the people who are watching this unfold and realizing they don't have to be silent anymore." Her comms director chuckled. "That's exactly why this is working. Stay the course." As the car neared the studio for her next enter, ready for whatever came next, The car pulled up to the studio entrance where a small crowd of reporters and onlookers had gathered. Cameras flashed as she stepped out, her posture poised, her expression unwavering. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Karoline, do you think you're exploiting this moment for political gain?" She barely paused as she responded. "Standing up for your values isn't exploitation. It's leadership." Without waiting for a follow-up, she strode inside, where producers greeted her with hurried enthusiasm. The network had bumped her interview to a prime slot. She was the story of the moment, and they knew it. As she settled into the makeup chair, a young assistant nervously approached her. "Ms. Leavitt, I just wanted to say I saw the clip. I really respect how you handled yourself." Karoline met her gaze in the mirror and smiled. "Thank you. And please call me Karoline." The assistant nodded, visibly relieved. "It's just, I wear a small cross necklace too. I usually tuck it into my shirt when I come to work. Didn't want to cause any problems." Karoline turned to her, eyes steady. "Why should your faith be a problem?" The assistant hesitated, then gave a small, almost embarrassed shrug. "I don't know. It just feels like certain beliefs are more acceptable than others, you know?" Karoline nodded. "I know exactly what you mean. But here's the thing. If we let people pressure us into hiding who we are, they win. You don't have to be loud about it, but you don't have to hide it either." The assistant exhaled, as if hearing those words lifted a weight off her shoulders. "Thank you." Minutes later, Karoline was seated on set, waiting for the red light on the camera to flash. The host, a veteran conservative journalist, gave her a knowing look. "You're making waves, Karoline," she smirked. "I usually do." The red light blinked on and the interview began. "So," the host started, "in the last 24 hours you've gone from political commentator to cultural lightning rod. Did you expect this kind of reaction?" Karoline leaned forward slightly. "I didn't expect it, but I'm not surprised. Americans are tired of the double standard. They're tired of being told their faith is offensive, their values are outdated, and their voices don't matter. This isn't just about me. It's about millions of people who feel like they have to walk on eggshells just to exist." The host nodded. "Some are calling you a new leader in the fight for free expression. Do you see yourself that way?" She paused for a moment, then answered carefully. "I see myself as someone who refuses to be bullied into silence. If that makes me a leader, so be it. But this isn't just my fight, it belongs to every person who's been told to sit down and shut up." The host smiled. "Well, Karoline, I have a feeling this is just the beginning for you." She returned the smile, her voice steady. "I have a feeling you're right." By the time the interview wrapped, her phone was already buzzing with more messages, more requests, more headlines. She exhaled, bracing herself. The firestorm wasn't over. If anything, it was just getting started, and Karoline Leavitt was ready for it. As Karoline stepped out of the studio, the night air was crisp, but the energy surrounding her was electric. The cameras were still rolling, reporters still lingering, eager for another soundbite. She had expected this. Once a story caught fire, the media didn't let go easily. Her team was already waiting by her car, phones in hand, briefing her on the latest developments. "Karoline, you just hit 500,000 new followers across social media in the last 6 hours," her communications director said, his voice laced with excitement. "Your interview clips are being picked up everywhere. Fox News, Newsmax, even mainstream outlets can't ignore it anymore." She took a deep breath, letting it sink in. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a movement. But that also means the attacks are ramping up. Another aide chimed in. "Some commentators are calling you an opportunist, saying you're playing the victim card." Karoline smirked. "Right, because standing up for yourself is only acceptable when it fits their agenda." Her comms director nodded. "Exactly. And now, we have politicians weighing in. A few prominent conservatives are praising you, saying you handled the moment perfectly. But the left? They're trying to spin this as manufactured outrage." She sighed. "They always do." As she slid into the back seat of her car, her phone buzzed again. This time, an unexpected name flashed on the screen. A well-known Republican strategist, she answered. Hello? Caroline. The voice on the other end was smooth, calculated. You've got everyone talking, and not just the media. She sat up a little straighter. Go on. You have the kind of presence we don't see often. Articulate, fearless, and most importantly, unafraid to challenge the narrative. She knew where this was going. We think you should consider something bigger than just media appearances, the strategist continued. Have you ever thought about running for office? Caroline's heart pounded, but her expression remained steady. She had considered it before, briefly. But now with millions of Americans watching, rallying behind her, it didn't seem so far-fetched. I appreciate the call, she said carefully. But if I run, it won't be because someone tells me to. It'll be because I know it's the right fight at the right time. The strategist chuckled. That's exactly why you'd be good at it. Think about it, Caroline. A lot of people are. As she hung up, she stared out the window, the city lights blurring past. Was this just the beginning of a bigger fight? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. They're going to come after you harder now. Be ready. She tightened her grip on the phone. She wasn't afraid of the fight. She welcomed it, because now, more than ever she knew, this wasn't just about a necklace, it was about something much bigger.